If you drive an electric car, there's a chance part of its battery came from here, Obi Island, tucked away in eastern Indonesia. From above, it's postcard perfect in these slick videos from the main company on the island, Harita Nickel. Behind this fishing village, Harita's vast nickel plant dominates the skyline, supplying the Chinese battery makers who supply the giants of the EV world, such as Tesla, BMW, Toyota, among many others. Nickel is essential to making electric cars go farther and faster, and no one has more of it than Indonesia. Harita has made Obi ground zero for the EV battery boom. The firm presents itself as a global leader of responsible mining. But now, a joint investigation by the Gecko Project and partners tells a different story, drawn from a massive leak, 500 gigabytes of files, including emails and documents, spanning a decade. They show that Harita knew for years that its facilities were leaking a toxic chemical called hexavalent chromium, or chromium-6. The group's own data showed that chromium-6 had repeatedly contaminated a river in Kawasi, and eventually the main drinking spring in the village. Inside the company, the connection was clear. Senior company staff drew a direct line between Harita's operations and the contamination on Obi. It was spelt out in black and white. Meanwhile, locals living next door were kept in the dark. Nickel mining is a destructive process and requires stripping back layers of soil. Chromium is a metal found naturally in soil, but when exposed to air and water, it can transform into its toxic form called chromium-6. Chromium-6 was made infamous by the film Erin Brockovich, starring Julia Roberts in 2000.
By the way, we had that water brought in special for you folks. Came from a well in Hinckley.
This is Tawny Gultam, a Harita director and the company's head of health, safety, and environment. When this photo was taken for a pool of reporters in April 2023, he knew chromium-6 had been leaking from the company's site for years. He had been trying to stop it. Harita knew it had a problem as early as 2012, just 2 years after mining began on Obi. That year, internal tests picked up chromium-6 in wastewater runoff leaving the site, at more than 3 times the legal limit. Exposure to chromium-6 can wreak havoc on the body. Liver and kidney damage, teeth erosion, skin irritation, and potentially cancer. Harita staff were well aware of its dangers. They tried, but repeatedly failed to bring chromium-6 levels under control. Harita tried chemical treatments, settling ponds, and even using wetlands to filter the water. But the contaminated water kept flowing, appearing at different places and times. Tanya was worried the story might get out. Since 2012, the company's testing repeatedly showed high levels of chromium-6 in its mining wastewater. And by 2018, the stakes were getting much higher. Harita commissioned a study of the village spring, the main source of drinking water for Kawasi. The findings came back with a clear warning. But in spite of the study's findings, Harita forged ahead with a massive expansion of its operations. In 2018, the group broke ground on a $1 billion joint venture with a Chinese metals giant called Lijun Resources and Technology. The mission was to build Indonesia's first HPAL facility, a factory to turn nickel into battery-grade material. For Harita, it was a major milestone. For Indonesia, it would cement its position as a linchpin of the global EV supply chain. But HPAL came at a cost: waste, millions of tons of it. And the new HPAL factory sat just 200 meters from Kawasi's main drinking spring. By 2022, company testing started to show that Kawasi's drinking water was now repeatedly contaminated. In 2022 and early 23, the company's tests showed that the spring water repeatedly carried chromium-6 above legal and safe limits. The spring feeds directly into Kawasi. Pipes carry the water into homes for drinking, cooking, and washing. Harita suspected that underground water was polluting the drinking spring. But it wasn't just the spring that was polluted. Testing showed that water with high levels of chromium-6 was pouring from the HPAL site into the nearby river. When the river swelled, it breached its banks, flooding homes. Outside scrutiny was growing. Publicly, a Harita company insisted there was no problem. In February 2022, the company told The Guardian its tests had shown there was no chromium-6 discharge from its system. That same month, chromium-6 repeatedly spiked, hitting more than twice the legal limit in Kawasi Spring. As Harita prepared to go public on the Indonesian stock exchange, it answered questions from banks underwriting the deal. Harita told the banks the spring met regulatory standards, but inside the Harita Group, the testing data showed chromium-6 levels were still well above legal limits. Residents of Kawasi interviewed by the Gecko Project in 2025 said they were never told about the chromium-6 contamination. No one interviewed was given alternative water, not by the company, not by the regional government.
Tidak ada pemberitahuan apapun dari perusahaan, apalagi memberitahukan bahwa warga ini air kita sudah tercemar, itu nggak ada sama sekali. Masih sering kalau sampai batuk, itu ada, kalau setiap kita buang ludah, itu ada nanah sama darah, kayak gumpalan.
Determining if chromium-6 is the cause of illnesses is difficult. Nur Hayati doesn't know for sure if the water is to blame, but she drinks it every day. Indonesian legal experts interviewed as part of this investigation said Harita and its executives should be investigated. To read the full investigation, visit thegeckoproject.org.